Today, we have a very difficult task ahead of us. We are going to look at one player you should consider trading for on all 32 NFL teams. Yes, that's a lot of potential trade targets. Now, if I'm being completely transparent, some of these were easy. Some of these were like, yes, this is an excellent trade target. Some of them, I just had to really find who the best possible one was because there wasn't an obvious, like sometimes guys just stick out like a sore thumb. Like, yes, looking at their ADP, this guy is an easy trade target, but not all of the teams lined up that nicely. So we're going to get into it, look at a player from every single team. We're going to go in alphabetical order. So we are going to begin with the Arizona Cardinals. And I went with Marvin Harrison Jr. as the potential trade target on that team. Right now, his ADP rank is 28th overall. Positionally, he's the wide receiver 10 off the board. Now, when I looked at this team, Trey McBride, he's already tight end 2. You're not going to get much better than that. Kyler Murray seems about adequately ranked. You look at some of their other players like the running back position, it's tough to know how much longer James Conner can go. Is Trey Benson ever going to be that guy? There was just enough ambiguity with everything else that it really landed on Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, he's going to be one of the most, if not the most expensive player we talk about. So we started off the gates pretty strong. But that being said, if there's a player that has a chance to increase in value over the next 2 years, it's definitely Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best prospects that I've ever graded. He looks like he's been in the lab. He's been, bulking up based on what we've seen in recent press conferences. And remember, it wasn't until his second season in college that he really blossomed. Maybe it's the same way in the NFL. Sometimes it takes guys a year or so to really get things going. And let's not forget, his rookie year was not bad. Over 800 yards, 8 touchdowns. That's a good player. It's just the expectations were sky high for this player. So I'm still in on Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm willing to buy him at his current ADP. Let's move over to the Atlanta Falcons, and we're going to go with a deeper player here. Let's go with Darnell Mooney. Quarterback-wise, Michael Penix was another guy that I considered a little bit, and even Tyler Algier I think is an interesting name. But Darnell Mooney last year finished very strong overall in the season. Darnell Mooney finished as the 31st wide receiver last year, so he was a very solid wide receiver 3 for your fantasy football teams. And in a full offseason with a guy like a Michael Penix, that number should only increase. And he even missed a game and had a game in there with a 0-point total. So I expect him to be a better value even this year, especially considering they just didn't do anything in the receiving game. It was basically, hey, we like the pass catchers we have now. We're going to stick with them. So I think Darnell Mooney has a chance to be one of those sneaky players that a contending team adds as a really good flex option. Next guy up, let's go over to Baltimore, and we're going to take a look at tight end 15 according to our ADP, and that's Isaiah Likely. He's the 128th player off the board. So a player like this, when you're buying this low, there's a chance for him to really spike. And the thing that we're looking for is what's going to happen with Mark Andrews. In the offseason, they said that he was potentially available for trade. Nothing ended up happening at draft time, but now that we're in June, we could potentially see some moves being made. So Isaiah Likely could instantly vault to their top guy, but this was another team that didn't do a ton as far as pass catchers go. Yes, they did add DeAndre Hopkins, but we know that at this point in his career, he's kind of done. So Isaiah Likely has a chance, even if nothing happens to Mark Andrews this year, to be a good asset. But this is Dynasty. So long-term, Isaiah Likely has a very good outlook on this team, and I think he could end up being a great asset, especially at this price tag. Let's head to Buffalo. Buffalo was one of the hardest teams for me to find a buy. Every player seemed pretty adequately ranked, which either meant they were an elite player that you weren't touching, or they were a player that was lower ranked, but because there's a lot of question marks and a lot of concerns or lack of ceiling. So I ended up going with backup running back Ray Davis. Ray Davis, running back 53 right now, but the concerns over James Cook, he still has not gotten a contract, and there's a chance that maybe Ray Davis could be the lead back in 2026. It's not the strongest running back class next season, and he seems to be the next guy up. So with that potential of long-term value, I think Ray Davis is a sneaky buy right now if you're looking at the Buffalo Bills. Let's jump to Carolina, the Carolina Panthers. We're going to go with Chuba Hubbard as our buy for the Carolina Panthers. Running back 21 overall. But man, this guy had a really good season last year. Then I think people are kind of forgetting about that. He ended up averaging 16.1 points per game, which on a points per game basis, had he not missed the last 2 games, he would have been inside that top 12. 16.1 points per game was just a really, really solid asset overall. And we know that their other assets, specifically Jonathan Brooks, is not going to be able to play this year. Rico Dowdle, he's a guy that is a nice addition to this team, but not really a huge concern as far as taking a lot of touches away. I think Chuba Hubbard is an ideal running back too for your fantasy football team right now. And you can get him close to almost running back 3 prices at RB21 overall. It's a low end RB2 cost. So I think that's worth it on those contending teams. Let's go to Chicago. The Chicago Bears. We're going to go with Rome Odunze. There is enough ambiguity at the wide receiver position, the pass catching position right now, that it's not allowed a guy like Rome Odunze to rise up like I would have expected. He's still wide receiver 19, so he's not crazy cheap or anything like that. 55th player off the board, or ADP of 55.9, rank of 54. So he's a player that I think is pretty adequately ranked, but similar to a Marvin Harrison Jr., I really liked his tape. He's a player that I would expect to get more looks and more touches. So in this offense, yes, I know they did a lot at the pass catcher position, but I think long-term, he is still the most talented wide receiver on this roster. And I think him and Caleb Williams are going to be making sweet fantasy point music for a long time. Cincinnati was another tough one. There wasn't anybody there that I thought was not adequately priced, but if there was a player that was maybe a tiny bit cheaper than some of these other guys that we could still see a little bit of a higher ceiling on, it's T. Higgins. On a points per game basis, this dude was nuts last year. His issue was he's been missing some time, quite a few times over the past few seasons, but we don't know that he's going to remain in Cincinnati, but that might not be the worst thing in the world. He's either going to stay in Cincinnati, where we've seen him on a points per game basis be able to put up wide receiver 1 numbers, but we've also seen the possibility of him going to another team and him getting to be the featured target in that offense, which would be great for his value as well. So at wide receiver 17, I think this is pretty adequately priced. I'm totally fine with it, but there's still some ceiling left that could maybe be untapped potential with T. Higgins. Love this buy right here. Cleveland Browns, Jerry Jeudy right now in Dynasty going off the board as the wide receiver 35, 93rd player off the board. So you're getting him, way late in your drafts at this point. And he showed us he could be a wide receiver 1 last year. And I think people just automatically started pushing him down because the rumor was it's going to be Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter's coming to Cleveland. So that's going to push Jerry Jeudy to the wide receiver 2. Well, not only did Travis Hunter not come, but nobody came as far as legitimate pass catchers. So right now, it's the same pecking order as normal. And with a guy like Joe Flacco potentially as the starting quarterback, unless Shedeur Sanders really shows out, it's going to be a good opportunity for a guy like him to catch some deep passes, make some big plays. So I think Jerry Jeudy is an incredible value at wide receiver 35. Let's head over to Dallas. And right now, the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams as the potential buy. This is truly only if you're a contender because the risk is very high here. But at running back 43, the 157th player off the board as his ADP rank, look, this guy, he's going to have the opportunity to be the lead back in Dallas. And we saw with Rico Dowdle last year that if you're the lead back, good things can happen. And right now, there's nobody there that is for sure going to be a threat. I'm not too worried about Miles Sanders. The only player that I really have concerns about would be Jaden Blue. And it's tough for a rookie to come in and do it. Do I know for sure it's going to be Javonte Williams? No, but that's baked into the running back 43 price tag. So I think it's worth the risk, knowing that the talent is there. The issue is the injury sapped a lot of that burst that he had. Sometimes it takes a guy a couple years coming off of injury to look like his old self. Maybe Javonte Williams falls into that role. Let's head to Denver, the Denver Broncos, and Evan Engram. Evan Engram, he moved over there, and there's rumors that he could be that coveted joker in this offense. It's down to him and RJRV as the two guys that Sean Payton was kind of talking about being in that role. And if it's Evan Engram, we've seen tight ends in this offense go absolutely nuclear before. Think of Jimmy Graham back in the day with the Saints. This offense loves when there's a good athletic tight end there. Evan Engram is that guy. Look, I get it. He's had an up and down career. It's not been as consistent as you would maybe want, but Evan Ingram's still very, very talented. We've seen him be a tight end one, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times as a top 6 tight end. Not just a top 12 guy, but a top 6, which is really where the juice is. So Evan Engram, I think, is still a very good value all the way down as the 134th player off the board. We have not talked many quarterbacks yet, so let's get to our first one here. The Detroit Lions. I'm going with Jared Goff, quarterback 18 in Dynasty, the 55th player off the board. According to his ADP rank, his ADP is 56. Look, this guy just every single year gets it done. Like last year, he was quarterback 6 overall, and yet we're still drafting him at quarterback 18. Yes, I get it. Ben Johnson's gone, but I'm not worried about that. Jared Goff, everywhere he's gone, he's been a solid, steady asset. And then he's had times where he's really peaked and spiked. And we saw that last year in this offense. And you're like, well, yeah, that was just last year. But, well, the year before he was quarterback 7. So he's shown us that he can be a consistent quarterback 1 without the consistent quarterback 1 price tag. I still think after all these years, he's one of the best values in fantasy football. We didn't have a quarterback for a while, but we have 2 in a row. Quarterback 12, Jordan Love for the Green Bay Packers. Yes, he did not have the year last year that we thought he was going to have. That being said, we know that quarterbacks that finish at least once as a top 6 player, 70% of the time, they do it more than once. And I think he's one of those players that right now presents a little bit of a value. Yes, he was banged up. Yes, he was hurt. So he missed some time last year. But on points per game basis, he was still solid at 16.3 points per game. And he just had a couple down weeks in there that threw things for a loop. But overall, Jordan Love is a very, very solid quarterback. We saw him finish as quarterback 5 the season before. So we know it can absolutely be done when he was averaging over 19 points per game. I would expect him to be back into that range with him, adding even more weapons to this offense. We are heading down to Houston. In Houston, we have one of our lower ranked players that we're going to discuss in this process, and that's Mr. Woody Marks. Woody Marks, running back 63 off the board, the 210th player on average off of the board. Reason I'm going after this guy, this team actually used a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft to trade into the 4th to get him. So that means they evaluated him as a 3rd-round running back. When he was still on the board, they were aggressive to go get him. And Joe Mixon seems to miss a little bit of time often, and he has the opportunity to be able to go in there and maybe steal some passing work early. So I think that there's just at least enough opportunity and upside with Woody Marks. Do I think he's the long-term answer in Houston? No. But if he can spike in value and then you can trade him for a 2nd-round pick, then all of a sudden you've made a nice little profit off of a guy like Woody Marks. We're heading back to the quarterback position. Indianapolis, I'm guessing you think I'm going to say Anthony Richardson. I am not. I'm saying Daniel Jones, quarterback 38 off the board, the 205th player overall. Look, Daniel Jones, we've seen it with a lot of other quarterbacks in recent years. We've seen guys like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and most recently, Sam Darnold, guys that had a shaky beginning to their career, but then were able to turn it around in the right situation and in the right offense. Daniel Jones is going to have a chance to do that. Anthony Richardson's probably going to get the first snaps, but any sign of struggle, they're going to be bringing in a guy like Daniel Jones. So I would not be surprised if by week 4, week 5, we see a guy like Daniel Jones come in and be the guy. And maybe it's even just short-lived like we saw Ryan Tannehill do when he took over for Marcus Mariota. That's a real possibility as well. But even there, those quarterbacks just have so much value in super flex leagues that that's going to only make things better for you to either use him or turn around and sell him. The Jacksonville Jaguars last year used a second-round pick on Brenton Strange. And although we have not seen him produce necessarily yet, there have been some signs and some flashes where you're like, maybe there's something to this Brenton Strange kid. Well, now that Evan Ingram's gone, we see the tight end 27 off the board with a real opportunity to elevate his game. And remember, this was in an offense that was not nearly as effective last year as we would expect it to be this year under Liam Cohen. We even saw a guy like Cade Otton in Cohen's offense get a lot of run. So I think that there's a chance that Brenton Strange at tight end 27 could ascend into that, it doesn't sound great, no man's land at tight end, but that tight end 10 to 15 type of range where he's a solid fantasy asset despite now being tight end 27. We're going to go with another rookie running back in Kansas City, and that's Mr. Brashard Smith. The Kansas City Chiefs have been at their best offensively when they've had a legitimate receiving threat out of the backfield. This is what Brashard Smith does best. Former wide receiver from SMU, Brashard Smith switched to running back in his final season at SMU, had a huge year, but he still looks like a player that is primarily going to be used in a pass-catching role. He could get a ton of pass-catching opportunities down the stretch, and as the 224th player off the board, running back 69, that's pretty great value. Somebody that we can just take a flyer on and has a chance to way exceed his ADP. Maybe one of the most disrespected wide receivers in the game over the past 3 to 4 seasons, a guy named Jakobi Meyers for the Las Vegas Raiders. Year in, year out, this guy just produces. And yet, year in and year out, nobody cares. He was wide receiver 23 last year. The year before that, he was wide receiver 24. So he's producing at a wide receiver 2 level, but yet you're going to get him at wide receiver 50. And yes, I like Jack Besh. I think he's a talented player, but there's still going to be plenty of opportunities there. And I would not be surprised if Jakobi Meyers is still the leading pass catcher on this team, not named Brock Bowers. So Jakobi Meyers, really good value at wide receiver 50. I mentioned earlier that Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the most expensive player on the list, and he's the one we started off with. Technically, this guy is just a hair more expensive. Running back 5. He is the 27th player off the board, ADP of roughly 30. That's Omarion Hampton. Now, with Omarion Hampton, when you look at him, you're like, you're going to buy a guy at this point. Yes, I am willing to buy Omarion Hampton at this point. Now, part of this was a harder team to try to figure out. Everybody seemed pretty adequately ranked. But the other part of this is, when are you going to be able to get these young guys? Because you've got to get them before they show something. If you believe that they could legitimately be an elite running back, you've got to buy them as a rookie, because if not, you're going to have to wait till they're in year 5 or 6 when people think they're old and no good anymore. That's what I think about Omarion Hampton. I think talent-wise, he's one of the best running backs we've seen come out of college in the past 5-6 years. In fact, over the past 5-6 years that we've done the Nerd Score, which is our tape grade, Omarion Hampton was running back 3 as far as a pre-draft evaluation at running back. So I truly do believe in this player. And I think in this offense with this scheme, the sky is the absolute limit. Let's look at another rookie running back. We've got 2 rookie running backs in a row. Let's head over to LA with the Rams. And I'm going with Jarquez Hunter. I thought Jarquez Hunter was a nice player coming out, but it was his landing spot that really intrigued me a little bit. I did not expect the Rams to use any sort of real draft capital on a running back. They used a 4th-round pick on a guy like Jarquez Hunter. And Hunter, for everything that he is and everything that he isn't, this team, I mean, you saw the Sean McVay video where he was like, this was the guy we targeted. This is the guy we wanted. This is who we wanted in here. And I get it. Kyron's been good, but this is the 2nd year in a row that they've looked to draft a rookie running back with a similar profile. All 3 of these guys, similar size, similar skill sets. I think they are really looking for a complement to a guy like Kyron Williams. And my guess is Blake Corum was a bit of a disappointment to them last year. I think that means that they think that this could be the guy that is the true complement to Kyren Williams. And if he even gets a sniff of that opportunity, running back 62 is an absolute steal. Let's head to Miami. The Miami Dolphins took Jaylen Wright 2 years ago at running back. And the same thing we talked about with Woody Marks, a 4th-round pick, but they used a 3rd-round pick in order to get him in the next year's class. Running back 52 off the board, the 175th player overall. And I liked his tape. He was a disappointment in last year's opportunity. He did not do a lot in Miami, but the fact that they really didn't use any significant draft capital on a running back this year. Yes, you could mention Ollie Gordon, but that was a 7th-round selection. He's going to have a chance because last year, the running attack and Devon Achane specifically didn't produce on the ground like I think they hoped. He produced through the air, but not through the ground like they hoped. So I think Jaylen Wright has an opportunity to sneak in and get a lot of touches in this offense. Let's head up to Minnesota and look at a player that's probably never going to get the respect that he actually deserves simply because you have a guy like Justin Jefferson there. But Jordan Addison is a very, very talented and very capable wide receiver. He's been wide receiver 21 and wide receiver 23 over the past 2 seasons. So we know that the production is absolutely there, but he is still coming in relatively cheap to the production that he gives you. He's wide receiver 27, which he's been outperforming that the past 2 seasons already, but it's also the age. He's still so young. Normally, if you're a 28, 29-year-old finishing with these kind of numbers, you would fall into this range. But a guy like Jordan Addison is not getting the respect that he deserves. He should be much higher in ADP. I talked about a high-end rookie running back earlier in Omarion Hampton, and I'm going to do the same thing for the New England Patriots here. Travion Henderson, running back 10 off the board, and you're like, Garrett, that's still pretty expensive. You expect me to buy a guy that has not proven anything yet at running back 10 prices, 42nd player overall off the board? Yeah, I do. This is a player tape-wise, fantastic. One of the best players that I've scouted at the position over the past 5-6 seasons. So you could almost copy and paste what I just said about Omarion Hampton. He's a young player in an offense that's going to get him the football. The only difference is he's an incredible pass catcher, which Omarion Hampton's good at, but not like Travion. Travion has a chance for those massive big plays. He's also got a chance to catch a lot of balls there in New England. I really like Travion Henderson, more than willing to pay running back 10 prices to get him on my fantasy football team. It was tough to find somebody on New Orleans that I'm really willing to buy, but then I remembered a guy that I think a lot of us have kind of forgotten about, and that's wide receiver 62 off the board, Mr. Rashid Shaheed. I think when we saw what he was doing at the beginning of the season last year, I mean, people were in. They were willing to go after him. They were willing to buy him. But the problem was the injury bug spiked, and he just wasn't the same guy. But in 4 of the first 5 games when he was healthy, 16.3 points, 20.9 points, 15.7 points, 18.3 points. I mean, he was just producing at an unreal level on an offense that just wasn't very good. I think if he's healthy, and fortunately for him, he got injured early in the season, so he should be fine at some point early on in the early part of the season. I think Rashid Shaheed could just end up being a screaming value that is great, especially in your best ball leagues, but your dynasty leagues as well. Let's go to the New York Giants, and I'm going to go after Cam Skattebo, running back 25 off the board, right around 100 for his ADP, 98th player off the board. And this is one that maybe is a little higher risk than some of the others. Look, at his price tag, it's still not that risky, but he's a player that is a very, very polarizing player. Some people believe that he is nothing. He is not going to be special. But there's other people like me that think he's got a lot of really rare and desirable traits. Really, the only thing he's lacking is just that long speed. But everything else, the quick feet, the pass catching, the power, the break tackle ability, all of that kind of stuff is there for Cam Skattebo. And he's on a team where he has a fairly clear path to touches very early on. So it's a player that I want to go after before the price tag goes up, Mr. Cam Skattebo. Let's go to the other New York team, and I'm sticking with the rookie here. I'm going to go with Mason Taylor, tight end 18 off the board. 140 for his ADP. And I think Mason Taylor has a really, really nice skill set. And I think he is still growing and developing into the player that he is going to become. But when you look at that offense right now, it's Garrett Wilson, and that's it. I mean, there is really nobody else there to catch passes. So we could see him be a sneaky Sam Laporta type where he produces much earlier than a lot of people were expecting him to. So Mason Taylor with the skill set and the opportunity, I think, are married very nicely, and he could have a very good year this year. We've been talking a lot of lower tier players, but here's a guy that everyone recognizes his name, A.J. Brown for Philadelphia. He's gotten to that age range where people are just like, well, no, he's old and I'm not interested in him. Well, if you buy a player at age 28 and say that was Mike Evans, well, he's still playing, and that was a great value if you're able to buy him at 28 because now he's old. Devontae Adams, same thing. Cooper Kupp, same thing. I think this is one of those players that's still going to give you 3 to 4 really good seasons out of him. I think he's a fantastic value. Right now, he's wide receiver 14 off the board. I think he's going to continue to be a top 12 guy because that's what we've seen out of him, whether it's over a full season or in points per game because of injury. We've seen him be a top 12 type of guy every year with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think he's a guy that's going to continue to produce like that, and I'm still in on A.J. Brown. I cheated a little bit with Pittsburgh because I don't know who the guy is, and they're both so cheap. Literally the two cheapest players that we're probably going to be talking about here. So I'm willing to just buy them both. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. One's the 109th receiver, one's the 80th receiver. Both crazy, crazy cheap. I don't know who the wide receiver 2 is right now in Pittsburgh, but one of these two guys is going to have an opportunity to get into that role. And if either one of them could dare do what maybe a Randall Cobb did with Aaron Rodgers, we're expecting him to be the quarterback, or something like that, they could end up paying off handsomely. Look, even if they become wide receiver 54, okay, that's still a very valuable asset compared to what you paid to get them on your team. So yes, I don't have a crazy amount of confidence in either player, but I would like to get both of them on my team just to see what could be. All right, let's look at wide receiver 12 off the board for the Seattle Seahawks. That's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You're like, you're going to go try to buy a player like JSN right now after that amazing season? Why would you buy a guy at a peak like that? Because I don't think this is his peak. I think he is a player that could absolutely crush in your fantasy football leagues for years to come. Here's why. JSN did all of this last year, wide receiver 9 overall, and he was just 30th in target share. I expect that target share with a guy like DK Metcalf departing to only go up. And then you add in that he only had 6 receiving touchdowns. All of that tells me that JSN is in line to absolutely crush in the very, very near future. And so I think that this price tag of wide receiver 12 is still not expensive enough. I'm willing to get him on my team because I think this is a wide receiver 1 year in, year out for the next 5 or 6 seasons. I thought this guy's ADP was going to be much higher and I was going to have to pivot. But Brock Purdy is still the 16th quarterback off the board, 46th overall in Superflex leagues. And man, I am smashing that value whenever available in my drafts. I'm going to be taking Brock Purdy in that range over and over and over and over because once again, similar to Jordan Love, we've seen him be a top 6 guy before. He was quarterback 6 overall in fantasy football points in 2023. 70% of the time, if you are a top 6 guy, you will repeat as a top 6 guy. So better days are ahead. And always the question mark was, what are we going to do if he doesn't get the contract? Well, he did. He got the big contract, and yet his ADP stayed stagnant. I am all in on Brock Purdy at this price point, and I'm going to try to get as many shares as I can. I'm not sure how this guy is the 44th wide receiver off the board, but I've done several startups, and I've taken him in basically all of them this year, and that's Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin was the number 1 receiver at the beginning of the year last year before his injury. And it wasn't just like, oh, he did it for 3 weeks. He did it for 8 weeks. He was that good over the course of the beginning of the year. And we're going to just give up on him. Like, yeah, there's 107 other players I'd rather have. That makes absolutely zero sense to me. Chris Godwin should easily be at least 10 wide receiver spots higher than he is. Yes, he's an older wide receiver, but he's by no means an old wide receiver. When you look at some of the guys that are going ahead of him, it just truly does not make any sense to me. So you look at guys right ahead of him. Trey Harris, Jaden Reed, Jaden Higgins, Ricky Pearsall. Look, I get it. Some of these guys have nice upside, like a Luther Burden and a Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, some of these guys have a really nice upside, but I'm just going to take the guy that I've seen do it multiple times in his offense. Look, Baker Mayfield's dealing. Chris Godwin, ADP just way too low for me. I had a hard time with Tennessee trying to find a guy ADP-wise that I liked, that I trusted, that I thought had some upside. And I'm going to go with Tyjae Spears. This isn't my favorite selection, even though I like the player a lot. It's not my favorite selection of all the ones that I did. But he's the 143rd player off the board. And we've seen in this offense that given the opportunity, a guy can produce. Tony Pollard has been a little dinged up here and there over the years. And if there's even a crack or a crevice, Tyjae Spears could take over that role this year. We've seen a guy like Tony Pollard, age 28. That's kind of the age where guys start to tail off a little bit. He could take this bull by the horns and become the lead back in what should be an improved offense under Cam Ward. So I'm in on Tyjae Spears enough to make him my buy in Tennessee. Last but not least, let's head to the nation's capital, Washington, and we're going to go with Deebo Samuel. Yes, I get it. He's an older receiver, down year last year, but this guy's got a chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove, and he has an incredibly dynamic offense that is just begging to have a wide receiver too. Terry McLaurin did great last year, but we saw it come playoff time. You really needed somebody else in that offense. Some guys stepped up here and there, but Deebo Samuel could be that yards after the catch option. At wide receiver 51, it's a short-term buy, but I think for 2 to 3 years, you could have a very, very nice player on your hands at a fairly inexpensive price. So that wraps up my 32 players on 32 teams who I'm looking to buy. Let me know, is there a player that I missed, somebody that you think is a better buy than the guy that I named on that team?